Right. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? All right. Let me make sure that everybody knows what we're doing.
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
It's going great. Excellent. Okay, everybody make sure you have the live virtual classroom notes open and the thesis statement note catcher for today open. All right, I'm going to continue to post this message because not everybody can see it. All right. So as soon as you have the, 1 second, I'm going to wait for a few more people. Let's wait a couple more minutes for everybody to show up. If you are here, you can go ahead and open up the live virtual classroom notes for today, and you can start doing the do now. All right, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen with everyone, and today we're going to talk about thesis statements. Okay, so first of all, everybody should have this document open right now. This is the English 12 class notes for today. And this is what I posted to Google Classroom. Okay, it looks like this. And so as I'm going through my presentation, you should be taking notes and filling in the blanks, answering these questions. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to put you into breakout groups, and you can work together to finish these questions if anybody didn't get them, and answer these last two questions in the group discussion. And then this is due before 2 o'clock today, and that is how you will get your credit for coming to class today. I need to move this bar out of the way. Okay. Thesis statements. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is going to be review. We recently talked about thesis statements, and we've been talking about them throughout the year. But it's still good to get a refresher and to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page. So thesis statements, that is your main argument and the reasons why. So as you know, the thesis statement, if you recall, has several parts to it. We're going to talk about those parts in a minute. But inside the thesis statement is your main argument or your claim, and then the rationale or the reasons why you believe that. Why is the thesis statement important? Well, it is like the cornerstone of your entire paper. So the thesis statement is one of the most important sentences in the entire essay. It has several functions. The first is that it establishes the purpose of your paper. Like, what is the point of this whole thing that you're writing? Like, what ideas are you trying to get across? It also states your position on the topic. So it should be very clear from reading your thesis statement what your position is, what your argument is. It also guides the reader through your argument. And how it does that is that it talks about not just the claim, but it also explains your rationale or your reasoning for why you believe that. And it's going to help guide your reader through that argument. And then as long as you have your thesis statement in mind as you're writing, it's going to keep your writing focused. Because everything you should be writing should be in service to proving your thesis statement correct. So you should keep your thesis statement in mind throughout the writing process, and the main body of your paper should expand on the thesis statement, support the thesis statement with evidence, and then argue for its validity or its truthfulness. So as we know, the thesis statement has three main parts: the claim, the rationale, and the counter-argument. And the way that you organize that thesis statement depends on you, the writer. You get to make that decision. So I'm going to be a little less strict about thesis statement structure for this assignment. I want to see what you're able to come up with and what you're able to build after having written research papers and argumentative essays for the last 4 years. I want to see if you can construct a clear, concise, and a decent thesis statement. So the 3 parts that the thesis statement needs to have somewhere in that 1 or 2 sentences is the claim, which is your position or your argument, the rationale, the reasons why you believe that, and then some sort of acknowledgement of the counter argument in there. So how do we make sure that our thesis statements are strong? The best thesis statements are concise, contentious, and coherent. So let's talk about what that means. First, concise. A good essay or research paper is going to build up to your main argument. Your reader wants to know what that argument is and how you're going to make that argument. So that's the job that the thesis statement does. So in 1 or 2 sentences, 2 max, you should have your thesis statement written out. And that's how we keep it concise. Concise means short or well-packed. So you need to have a lot of information packed within 1 or 2 sentences. And it takes some skill in order to do that. If you remember writing thesis statements in earlier essays or earlier assignments, it's not the easiest thing to do, to make it concise, to fit everything in there, but it is possible. So keep that in mind when you're writing your thesis statements tonight. The second thing is that it needs to be contentious. Contentious means that it needs to be arguable. There needs to be multiple sides to the argument. A thesis statement is not just a simple statement of fact that your reader will easily accept. It should be something that challenges the reader's opinions. A good thesis statement is a claim that requires further evidence and analysis or argument to back it up. Your audience needs a reason to keep reading. If your audience reads that you believe that the sun is hot, they're not going to keep reading because that's so obvious. They already believe that. They don't need to read anymore. Yeah, okay, cool. We're on the same page. The sun is hot. So make sure that your claim in your thesis statement challenges opinions. It needs to be arguable, especially in an argumentative paper. So if you can imagine someone questioning or disagreeing with your statement, then that is a sign of its strength. You want people to be able to disagree with you, and then you want to be able to prove them wrong. Lastly, your thesis statement needs to be coherent. Coherent means that it makes sense. Your thesis statement might have several parts, but they should all add up to a coherent whole, and it should clearly relate to the rest of your paper. And then what's really important is that you need to make sure that the main points of your thesis statement appear in your section headings or topic sentences. So that goes back to the rationale. In the rationale part of your thesis statement, you are explaining your reasons or your evidence for why you believe your claim or why you are taking that position. And then throughout the paper, you go back to that rationale in the section headings or the topic sentences. Okay, so how do we write a thesis statement? The first step is something that you've already done. You formulate a research question. You come up with a research question that you want to answer or extract the question from a prompt. We don't have a prompt for this assignment, so you're coming up with your own research questions, and you've already done that. So in this example, we're going to use the example of the 2016 Brexit referendum. So this was Great Britain's decision to leave the European Union. So we want to ask ourselves, we have a question about that. We want to know what the main factors that led to the result of the 2016 Brexit referendum. The result of the Brexit referendum was that Great Britain voted to leave the European Union. So what were the factors that led to Britain deciding to leave the European Union? That's a good question, because that's going to lead to many, many, many different answers, and you're going to have to take a position on which one you believe in. The second step is to find an answer to that question and to take a position. So that's what you've been doing recently. You've been doing research about a research question and trying to formulate your own position. Like, what do you believe? What is your stance? After some initial research, you should be able to formulate a tentative a tentative answer to this question. And at this stage, it can be very simple. It should guide the process of continuing to research and to begin writing. And if you're writing an argumentative paper, which we are, the answer should pick a side and take a strong position on the issue. No wishy-washy. You need to decide what it is you believe and what you think the answer to your research question is, and then take that position and turn it into a claim. And so if we were doing research on the causes of the 2016 Brexit decision, and after doing some research, we find that Brexit was driven by political frustration. Okay, that is a claim that is arguable. Some people may disagree with that as the reason, but after doing your research, you've decided that that is what you believe is the reason. So now that we have that claim, we can start to move on to the next step, which is to support your answer with reasoning and evidence. Okay, this is the rationale part of the thesis statement. So after doing your research and coming up with a claim, the answer to your research question is likely to change and to, as you discover more and more evidence and more sources. So as you are writing your paper, you're going to keep developing and refining your thesis statement. And the way that you're going to support that is with evidence and reasoning. So in the example here, we have a final thesis statement about the causes of the 2016 Brexit referendum. We have the Brexit referendum result was driven by working class frustration with the political elite. So we can see there how the claim, the main part of our thesis, shifted. It went from Brexit was driven by political frustration. That's a little vague. So now we have narrowed it down to working class frustration with political elite. So working class people were frustrated with the politicians, the elite class of politicians in Great Britain. And now we need some reasons, some evidence to support that, caused by austerity policies that have eroded public services and fragmented communities. So these are the reasons why working class people were frustrated with political elites. And now we have a good claim, and we have some reasoning or some explanation as to why that claim is true. And now we can spend the rest of our paper trying to explain how that answers our research question. Well, the referendum offered an alternative to the status quo. So the reason why Great Britain decided to leave the European Union was because it offered them an alternative to what was currently or presently frustrating people. So that's a good thesis statement. It has pretty much the most important parts. You'll notice that this particular thesis statement doesn't include a counter argument, and that is something that you all are going to be required to do. If I were going to be rewriting this thesis statement with a counter argument, I would either do so at the beginning of this sentence. I would say, although certain people believe that Brexit was caused by racial tensions or tensions over immigration, in reality, the Brexit referendum result was driven by working class frustration with the political elites. Or I could say, I can add a sentence at the after this claim and say something in regards to mentioning the counter argument. So there's different ways that you can do it, but you need to make sure that you have the claim and the evidence and reasoning, and then a counter argument. So if we look at this, if we look at examples, more examples of counter argument or of our thesis statements, If the goal of our paper is to persuade a reader of a claim, then our thesis statement should take a clear, specific position and introduce the reasoning that we will use to argue it. This is the example that we just used. The Brexit referendum result was driven by political frustration is too vague. The better example was the one that we talked about. And if we look at the example and we analyze it, we have a clear claim, we have some rationale, and it's definitely something that the first example, although it does take a position, it doesn't really tell the reader anything about how we're going to build our argument. The second example condenses the key ideas and the evidence that we will use to convince our reader. So that's why the second one is better. It has examples, it has reasoning, rationale. So as we are, I'm going to put you into your breakout groups now, but what I want you to be doing in your breakout groups is to essentially be talking about your research up to this point and to start figuring out what your position is, like what is the claim that you're going to make. So for the last 5 minutes of class, I want you to get into your breakout groups and finish filling out the note catcher and talk a little bit about what it is you're learning and what your claims or your positions are after doing some preliminary research. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to put you into breakout rooms with about, let's see, 3 to 4 people in it. So make sure everybody has a chance to share, take about a minute each, and then you can fill out the rest of your note catcher and turn it in by 2. And then that's it. So as soon as you are finished with the note catcher and you turn it in, you're done for the day. And then just a reminder that the benchmark number 7 is due tonight at midnight, and that is going to be to write a preliminary thesis statement. So the assignment is already on Google Classroom. Just fill out the document and submit it on Google Classroom before midnight, and make sure that you and everybody else in your district is working on it, and you should be good.